So this talk is called Voice AI, the future is by everyone and for everyone. My name is Joan Bajorek, she, her. I'm the head of conversational research and strategy at Versa, which is a voice agency. I'm also the CEO and founder of Women in Voice, and I'll talk about both of those things today. I'm so jazzed to be here, especially during this tumultuous time. It is amazing that the Women Tech Network is here, and to meet and talk to people from all around the world brings me a lot of joy. So thank you so much for coming. Let's move into it. So perhaps you know about Mark Cuban, but he said there's no future that doesn't have ambient computing or voice activation. None. And so I think, especially he's a futurist, he's an investor, but thinking about the future of technology and what voice technology has to play a part in this whole ecosystem. So a little bit about me, since you probably don't know me. Like I said, my name is Joan. I'm a linguist and I'm a researcher. I live in Seattle. Greetings from Seattle, wherever you are around the world. I previously worked at Nuance. I got my PhD at the University of Arizona. A lot of my research publications have been published in high-profile places like Adobe XD, Cambridge University Press, Harvard Business Review. I got to speak at CES this year, which was super awesome. I participate in Voice Summit, and I'm also an Alexa champion. All these things to say is that I'm really connected with the voice ecosystem. I'm really thinking about and talking to different organizations who are building the future of voice technology and what technology looks like in the voice conversational ecosystem. So as I mentioned before, I'm the CEO and founder of Women in Voice, which is an empowerment organization internationally for women and gender diversity in voice technology. I'm also the head of conversational research at Versa, which is the largest voice agency in the world. I'll talk a little bit more about our projects as well. The outline of today's talk, so I'm going to be talking about voice AI, I'm going to be talking about innovation and ubiquity of voice technology. I'm also going to be talking about multimodal and integrated builds for all. And I think when we think about tech, we talk a lot about impact. And I think I'm gonna talk a little bit about problematizing who is able to use these tools right now and who might be in the future. Okay, what is voice AI here? Oh goodness. So voice AI, so when we think about voice, we think about communication through an oral modality, so a conversation. There's listening and there's hearing. With humans. And so when we think about artificial intelligence or augmented information, how I think about it, we have the computer both interpreting words and also potentially sending words out so that the input is voice and then processing on the computing side, and the output potentially is also voice, having this interaction. And one of the most sophisticated versions of this to date for end consumers is Google AI's project, Google Duplex. If you're in the voice ecosystem, maybe you know, but Duplex is a system where the Google Assistant can interact with someone over the phone so that, how can I help? And the person would ask, make me a haircut appointment on Tuesday morning, anytime between 10 and 12. And the Google Duplex will actually call the hair salon on the phone and make that reservation for you, having what we call a multi-turn interaction. So there are different pieces of the conversation going back and forth. And this has beaten the Turing test that people actually think that they're speaking to another human. Google Duplex puts in pauses and puts in different ways of iterating the information back and forth to each other. So it's a really cool technology. It scares people because it sounds so realistic that a voice assistant, the computer, can sound so realistic. But I think the implications of this technology, does it report that it's a robot and not a human? We talk about this, is that Google Duplex is a pretty narrow use case. It's a very specified, like you're looking to book an interaction or you're looking to go to a restaurant. It cannot support all the conversations of the world quite yet, but this has really pushed the bounds of what voice AI is today. And maybe you haven't heard of Google Duplex, but the ubiquity of voice technology is growing, right? For example, search by voice, Google reports that around 20% of their searches are made by voice query today, so that people are speaking into their Chrome or into their mobile devices. And I've already seen this in mine, but Google Assistant will replace voice search in Chrome in 2020, so that instead of a search bar, right, you can voice query material into Google. Similarly, with Google and Amazon being the behemoths in the United States, Alexa devices, there are hundreds of millions of IoT purchased. They announced at CES that hundreds of millions of weekly interactions with smart devices. So here on the right, we have, the Google Assistant, as well as a different Amazon IoT. There are so many around the world. Maybe you've tried them. At one point, 1 in 6 people in the United States had one. There's just a lot of people focusing on, and just the ubiquity of these devices. The fact that you can literally ask for search things in the future. And now, not only in the future, but how common this is. I think the ubiquity, I'm often told, like, voice tech, is that a thing? Do a lot of people interact with that? In fact, you may already, and you don't know that you are potentially. So the future also is not only with voice tech specifically, as we think about, here's a Google Home product, where you're literally looking at what is basically a black box, right, that is listening to you. It's a smart speaker. But in the future, we will be thinking about multimodal. And this is a common term in my field. Multimodal is thinking about leveraging multiple modes, and that could be all kinds of different inputs and outputs with the computer. So text, this could be audio, this could be video, this could be augmented reality, virtual reality, gesture, voice, inputs, outputs. Right now, you are hearing my voice. Hopefully, you're seeing the slides visually. And how that is interpreted by the computer that you might be seeing on your screen. So here are some other examples. And we have some Google hardware here with smart home devices, as well as on mobile. On the top right, we have examples of gesture and vision, so that by using computer vision, potentially in a medical setting, you could augment images to see them differently, and that the computer is interpreting your gestures in these different multimodal environments, where you could also be speaking to the computer as well. On the bottom right, we have augmented reality, where the device augments, right, what is in your reality. This was, famously done with Pokemon Go, right, augmenting the reality. There have been problems with hardware is not prepared to do the live streaming and the huge amount of data and computing that is expected with a lot of these systems. But this is the future of our tech that really fits the use case, right? If it's a furniture buying adventure, it really makes sense for that. If it's in a medical environment, and so forth. So this is multimodal. Here's some more really cool examples of voice technology in a multimodal world. So on the top left here, I believe this is from Hong Kong. These are other kinds of smart devices that came from Alibaba and Baidu, which are big companies out there. But really thinking about, do you see your media in this? Are you consuming news? How are you interacting with these systems? On the top right, here's an example from Kuwait, using Alexa to, this woman who's a technology blogger uses Alexa for her prayer practices. So using these in different ways. My company at Versa in Australia, we worked on a collaboration with Domino's, where you could, on the Google Assistant, you can ask Domino's to send you a pizza. And if you're an authenticated user, it'll send you a pizza, literally. And my CEO there has done demos with this where, she orders a pizza. The pizza comes so quickly, people are shocked and think that it was like a prank. It was not a prank. It's just, it goes that well in the system that it's basically a send, and the pizza gets ordered through the Domino's system. So check it out on Google Assistant. There's also other systems on the bottom right here where there's a smart device in a home environment that turns to see you in a different thing. So it's using not only computer vision as well as speech, but it's really being thoughtful about, is the screen pivoted toward you? Can it hear you well? Is the microphone a 180-degree mic? And so forth. So I think really thinking, these are some really cool examples, I think, all around the world of people using devices in different ways. Lastly, on this one, thinking about multimodal and those inputs and outputs that I was talking about can be in different modalities. This is an example of American Sign Language using Alexa devices as well. So in this case, Abhishek Singh used computer vision to interpret signs from the user. So American Sign Language uses gesture in that sense, that is put into the Alexa system, and then voice and screen and back to text, so that someone who communicates through American Sign Language can use the Alexa system, which is a really cool use case. And also thinking about when we're blending, what are these inputs and outputs, what different languages are being used in this multiplicity of environments. And so this is where tech for all, especially with American Sign Language, is one example of something that it is a language, but maybe it's not one we traditionally think of when we're thinking about different languages. In my work, I really think about how tech is or isn't working for lots of different people. So tech for all. Specifically, my most famous publication, and the one I'm deeply proud of, was published last year in Harvard Business Review. It was so well loved that they put it on the homepage, and they even translated it into Brazilian Portuguese, this was one of my comps papers for my PhD, and I'm just deeply proud of being able to hopefully help people interpret better what bias really means in these contexts. So the article is titled "Voice Recognition Still Has Significant Race and Gender Biases." And specifically, it looks at some research from the National NAACL, as well as there's been an updated report of this at Stanford, looking at Black and white speakers, but this idea that we have significant race and gender biases of what current computers can understand. And one of the big things I talk about in this paper is that it's not intentional. I really don't believe that there are people at these companies being like, oh, let's design something that's horribly biased against people. No, in fact, there are huge incentives for people to be making the best systems possible economically. Yes. Moderation panel. Oh, I'm not sure what's going on there. I'll continue. Oh, Shani, maybe this is the next speaker getting ready. Looking at, sorry, we're looking at many, many screens.
I'm not a speaker, sorry.
Oh, are you the moderator for this panel?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm just joining here.
Lovely. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I am just continuing to talk about gender and dialect bias. This is a very famous paper from 2017 that looks at accuracy. I don't know if you play with ggplot2. That's my coding language is R, but this is what this was made in. And you can see different accents from California, New Zealand, New England, Georgia, and Scotland. So different people speaking these languages, speaking these dialects, excuse me, and that it's 13% across these more accurate for women than it is for men. And for mixed race speakers, it's potentially 10% lower in accuracy. So this is the 50% line. Basically, these systems are not performing that well, is the answer to most of this. And if this is not exactly interpretable for everyone, I made a scorecard that's potentially a little bit more interpretable. So for example, if 3 people are all native speakers of English, and the only real difference is who they are as a speaker, and they're reading the exact same paragraph, my friend Josh, who's a white male, might get an A- on how well the system understands him. It understands almost everything. He only needs to correct 8% of what's going on. If I speak in the same system with the same paragraph as a white female, I might get a C+, so a 79 of how well it understands me. And even worse than this, Jada, a mixed race female, might get a D+ of how well the system understands her. So I think I talk about this type of research at tech events and at dinner parties as well. And people say, oh, this explains it. It always understands Gary and never understands me. And I think one of the things I struggle with terribly is that people believe it's their own fault that the tech doesn't understand them. And that's utterly not the case. Most of these systems are just deeply biased, unfortunately, and we are working on that in the speech ecosystem. And when we think about why to make a system better, not only is there an obvious moral obligation, but there's a huge amount of money in these type of IoT performing well for everyone. So for example, one of the examples I think about often is my coworker who speaks Spanish and English, and he and his wife have a significant amount of purchasing power. They considered buying a smart fridge, which I don't know if you realize exactly how much smart fridges cost. They cost a lot of money, but he decided not to buy a smart fridge because he knew his wife and he would not be understood by the smart fridge and the voice recognition in it. And I think this is, especially in the United States, $1.7 trillion in purchasing power for the Latinx community in the United States. So there's a huge amount of money that they have to purchase different IoT that they want to. And also there's a huge growth index that the Latinx community accounts for almost half of the growth of the US population. So really think about, who are you catering to? Is it prepared for them? Will they be buying it? Are there preventing factors to that? And this also is spoken about by Melinda Gates. Huge missed financial opportunities, financial blind spots. I think I'm preaching to the choir. You all are at the Women Tech Global Conference, but I think it's really important when we think about incentives to other people who might not come from our perspective or really need the case to be made for why to consider these opportunities. Financial blind spots. So she says, we care about diversity, but we really care about how much money we make. Women are 85% of consumer dollars spent. Women control 70% of the financial decisions in the house. So you're missing an opportunity because you don't see it. So you're leaving money on the table. You're not in the deal flow. I think this is extremely compelling, especially from someone as successful as Melinda. But I think really articulating in that way can be extremely powerful. We started at 20, it ends at 40. I have 3 minutes left. I have some examples of different cool startups in the ecosystem that are working on voice technology for kids. Check out Soapbox Labs. They just raised 6.5 million. Novel Effect, especially if you have kids. This company does soundscapes behind your reading of a book. That's really cool. They're based in Seattle. I know the founders, they're phenomenal. There's also, when we think about voice technology for an elderly population, are we designing tech that is for the 50 and over cohort, or depending on what you think of elderly as? Clearly, that's, some people live much, much longer. But really thinking about tech that is designed for an older population and what their needs might be, and how voice tech or technology in general is prepared to support them. Lastly, on some of these example ones, I think, Common Voice is a project out of Mozilla Firefox, you may have heard about. Mozilla is working on a project that teaches machines how real people speak instead of learning how to speak so Alexa understands you, for example. And they make voice data freely and publicly available, open source. You can donate your voice, and they really think about what demographics are compiled in these data sets. So I've donated my voice, check it out. Common Voice is the name of the project through Mozilla. Lastly, I of course have to also talk about my amazing company, Versa, based in Australia. We've done projects with Huggies, with Domino's, with Beyond Blue, which is around mental health. We've worked on maternal and child healthcare apps and conversational bots, as well as Coca-Cola. We've done some promotions with them. So if you're interested in hearing more about conversational AI, about voice technology, about how to support your brand, or you're just interested in this, definitely get in touch. Versa, we do some amazing work. Lastly, as the CEO of Women in Voice, I have to tell you about my amazing community. We have 12, I think almost 13 chapters around the world, all across the globe. Here's an example from a Mexican hackathon. Here are some of my Japanese ambassadors. And here is a tech event in Madrid at the Google for Startups. So there's a lot of cool work we're doing. If you have interest in this, if you're pivoting to voice, we're an international empowerment organization for women and minority genders in voice tech. We're all about building community, amplifying, providing professional development, empowering, and celebrating people, diverse people in this field. So check it out. Our website is womeninvoice.org, or type in Women in Voice. We're really active on Twitter and LinkedIn, as well as Slack and some other forums. So this has been Voice AI. The future is by everyone and for everyone. I hope you have enjoyed this. I look forward to being in touch. Again, you can find me and all of this work on social media. I've put my details in the chat, and I'll do that before I leave as well. It was lovely speaking with all of you, and I look forward to continuing the discussion.